Hello and welcome to Tik-Tokophobia with me, Alexia, and my co-host JJ. Hi, JJ.
Hello, lovely to be with you again.
Yeah, we're back. And today we're going to be talking about tocophobia and relationships and how this fear of pregnancy and childbirth can really shoehorn itself into the relationships that you have. We're not just talking about your significant other, but also other relationships, mainly your friends, but also, there can be some more in there as well. So, um, yeah, now, JJ, this is something I feel like you've really experienced a lot. So do you want to just maybe start with your own personal experience here?
Well, let's start with significant others. Two marriages that went south. One, first one, did have the conversation about children, and we agreed that we would adopt rather than actually have babies. Not realizing, of course, me not realizing that that was my tocophobia speaking, because I had no idea what that was. But anyway, that was fine. That marriage, it didn't last, and partly it didn't last because I was always looking for somebody to look after me, to save me, because I always had this inbuilt sort of anxiety and fear. So there was always that gnawing away at the back of me. And in my younger years, I guess I was always looking for somebody to look after me. And I chose somebody who couldn't really do that. And so everything fell apart. And I think, we talked about in other episodes me being with a doctor at that time and thinking I had endometriosis, and the doctor was saying, oh, just have babies and everything will clear up. And me thinking, no, no, please stop. That's not the answer. Please don't tell me that's the answer. But then many years later, second marriage, I had a miscarriage. And again, talked about that in other episodes. It was particularly traumatic for me. And then a couple of years after that, my husband left me because I, quotes, can't have children, close quotes. And that was devastating, absolutely devastating. It took me a long, long time to get over that. So we can talk more in depth about both of those, if you like, but that's the headline. So the tocophobia, which I now know is behind all of this, actually was behind the failure in many of my relationships, many of my significant relationships with men, and even people that I've lived with and not married. There's always been something there that's arisen out of the fear that tocophobia is, the underlying fear that we never hear about, nobody ever talks about. And then, of course, there's the friendships, and the friendships with women who then get pregnant and have lots of babies, and you just can't deal with it
Yeah.
somehow. And they can't deal with you either, let me just say. It seemed to me, because I felt that often my friends who got pregnant and had babies found it very difficult to then be with somebody who was single and, quote, carefree, and didn't have to worry about the babysitter, didn't have to worry about the feeds, didn't have to worry about all those other things that new mums have to think about. And so even then there might even be a bit of resentment builds up, right? And then me, I don't know how to deal with that. So the relationship eventually fizzles out. There are so many levels of this, though,
Yeah.
and so many different experiences of this. But basically, it can have a quite devastating impact on our relationships all the way, across the board, and family as well, of course.
Mm.
You know,
I know,
family.
like, yeah, well, sorry to interrupt,
No, go
JJ.
on. No.
When I think about when I was in my significant relationship where I felt pregnant, and I probably would have realized at that point that I had that something wasn't right. Um, but I was having a chat to my partner about this yesterday, as with this podcast and everything, and I was like, this was shaping the conversation without me realizing. So when I fell pregnant, we'd already been together 5 or 6 years. I was in my mid-30s. So this, you could argue, is a significant relationship. And we probably at that point should have had the baby conversation or the kids conversation, and we hadn't. So I remember one of the anxieties that I had when I found out I was pregnant. It's like, I don't even know if he wants kids. He might leave me. I'm going to be a single mum, just like my mum. Like that was what's going on in my head. So basically, that means that I hadn't had the kids conversation with a partner that I'd been with for over 5 years as a 35-year-old. Like, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah.
So, but actually, one thing that this has made me realize is that if I didn't have the baby conversation, like I really should have had I really should have had kids much sooner because actually it was all the fear. And now that I've had them, I love that I'm a mum, and I just wish I was a mum sooner and had an opportunity to be a mum sooner, and I didn't do anything with it. I had I chose to have, I ended up having babies when I was running my own business. So I had to fund my own maternity leave. I had to juggle being a mum with a business owner and doing all of that, which is not an easy trajectory. Much easier to
Tough.
be working and take maternity leave and getting paid to stay at home and then know that
Yeah.
you'll be able to go back and get your job again. Like that would have been a much easier thing for me to do than wait until later and be an older mum with the apparently health risks that come with that. But also with the delay, with the lack of energy that you have when you're older, because yeah, like I remember when I was young, I was going out and I was like getting 3 hours a night sleep and going back to work, and I could handle all that. Of course, when babies came along and I only could get 3 hours a night, I suddenly became not the same thing to handle. So I would have loved to have a much earlier pregnancy, but it was shaping my decision. It was shaping the conversations with my partner, and we didn't plan. We didn't plan. A lot of couples, they plan. Oh, we'll get married, then we'll chill out for have fun as a couple for a few years, travel. Then we'll have the babies, and they plan for that. They plan their finances. They plan. They plan as a couple. None of that was going on in my relationship, and so that was understandably creating quite a lot of things conversations that should have been said and had that didn't. And suddenly when it all came out, created challenges. So even though it didn't separate us, it definitely got in the way of what should have been the intimacy, if you like, because the intimacy, we need to talk about intimacy, which we'll go on to in a bit. But I'm talking about the kind of intimacy in terms of the closeness that you feel, that kind of like, you're coming together as a couple. It's you versus the world. It's you doing your thing. That was compromised because this conversation was this fear was getting in the way of that. And I wonder whether, like if I could redo all that again, my God, I wish I could have healed this sooner. I wish I'd known about it sooner. Like,
oh yeah.
Oh my God, like I would have and when I get women messaging me going, oh, shall I wait till I'm pregnant to sort this out? I was like, no, the minute you know about this, just bloody do it, because this is showing up in more ways that you can imagine. Like, do not wait. Why? It's almost like saying, oh, I could be happy, but no, I'll wait. I'm going to wait. I'm going to put that back 5 years. I'm going to stay in my anxiety, stay in this, and just put off happiness. No, don't do that.
No, for God's sake, don't ever do that. And the intimacy piece is really interesting because as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, yes, and that was part of the breakdown of those relationships, is because whereas I thought that I was probably, allowing myself to be intimate, I was never fully fully on board in terms of intimacy with any of the relationships I've had. I didn't know how to, because there was this invisible barrier somewhere that I couldn't break through.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder.
And it's because I guess also you can't have an honest conversation, not honest, but a straightforward from the heart conversation about the kids piece.
No.
Even if he doesn't want kids, I don't know, like I would have thought most men probably do. But if they've got tocophobia as well and they don't know, then they might not either. So you might land on somebody that's also got what you've got going on. Or maybe they've got kids from another relationship. Who knows? I mean, there's so many different situations that might be there that mean that you know that you decided that you want something different with your life. So that is also possible. But the going back to intimacy, like the one thing that I can, with some clients we spend a lot of time on, is sex, is they can't have sex. Sex is a real problem because obviously sex is what leads to pregnancy. So they can't fully surrender. They can't let go. Sex is stressful. It's tension. That can lead to fertility challenges because fertility, you know, a fertile body is one that's not stressed. And so that creates another relationship spiral that can be incredibly difficult to navigate the fertility journey. But it's because on some level, potentially, your body's going, no, this is not, it's a big protective mechanism. And so whether it's protecting yourself from actually the act of sex, allowing yourself to enjoy it, really like, you know, really go to town with it, or even just, you know, not, then the body's like, no, we're not doing this. Those fallopian tubes, we're just going to clamp those little babies shut. We're not going to let
Yeah.
that happen because it's too much. I'm not going to be able to handle that situation.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talking about that because I'd never had a problem with enjoying sex, but you see, sex and intimacy are two different things in my head, right? So yes, I mean you're intimate in terms of, you know, the bodies coming together, but there's another level of intimacy, isn't there? And that's the level that I could never quite break through, and that's that um energetic, mental, whatever you want to call it, but not the physical. It's that other level of intimacy that you're never quite fully you and present,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
That emotional intimacy, that kind of feel
Emotional
like
intimacy,
two
yeah.
beings coming together and almost merging, almost that kind
Mm-hmm.
of like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, and that's just come to me as you were talking about it just now. So I'm thinking, yeah, well, you know, all that was great, although I did take precautions, and you know, never really feared. I always had it in my head that I was never going to get pregnant, that I was never going to have babies from a young age.
Mm.
It was just always in my head that it would never happen to me. It's never going to happen to me. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
From the tocophobia,
Yeah.
which I had no idea I had.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Because I knew I'd have two kids. Like I could imagine myself with two kids, but I couldn't imagine whatever it took between me and it. And obviously, as I was getting older, that was kind of, I was running out of runway. And there was
mm,
the tick tock of the body clock that was like, okay, you know, and I've got a lot of women that come to me because of the body clock pressure of, he's now said, well, what about the kids? We've really got to get the kids thing sorted. And they're like, oh, I've realized I've got an issue here. And that's when they come to me. And so finally they realize, and it's their body clock, the pressure of the body clock with the other half saying, come on then, we're gonna do this or what? Because if we
yeah,
don't, you know, and the guy needs to know, like, if
yeah,
you're not gonna give him what he wants, that maybe you would have spoken about at the beginning of the relationship when before it was real, and therefore you could like, you know, if you would ask me when I was in my 20s, I'd be like, yeah, I'll probably have kids one day. Yeah. So in the relationship, like, yeah, and I've got not averse to that. But suddenly crunch time, oh, hang on a minute. Now you're asking, and now it's real. Now it's suddenly a whole different beast. And so then the guy's got to know, like, okay, if I got to go elsewhere because I really want to be a dad,
yeah. And that's what happens, right? They do go elsewhere if you know,
right?
if you're not going to go there. Yeah,
Yeah. And I've had a lot of clients as well come to me going, I've got to sort this out because if I don't sort this out, he's going to leave me. He's told me it's his
yeah.
ultimatum. And it's like, and there's one couple in particular where they were childhood sweethearts and they adored each other.
Mm,
Like it literally, this was the only thing that was getting in the way.
mm.
And if she could sort this out, then that was going to be fine. And isn't that just heart-wrenching? I mean, I just
It
think
is.
about that now and just think it's an awful situation to be in. And yet it's perfectly reasonable from the man's perspective to, you know, like, and yet the woman's in this very difficult situation, especially when she doesn't know what it is or what the hell's
Well,
going on.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
How can you fix
absolutely.
something that you don't know what it is?
But how great is it that we can now talk about it. We now understand. Well, you and I anyway understand what it is, and that we can get through it. Unfortunately for me, when I found out about it, it was a bit too late biologically for me to go down the baby making route. But it's helped me with so much else in my life, so much else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of like the relationship piece, then, there's also the friends piece. And I know you talked about this already, you touched on it at the beginning, but
Yeah.
I had a friend that she called time on our relationship when she found out I was pregnant.
Mm.
And at the time I had just healed my tocophobia, which I didn't know was tocophobia. So I was still like just happy that I suddenly now wasn't terrified of birth. But looking back and now that we're having this conversation, I realize that's what was going on. That's what she clearly could not now handle, having a friend that was now entering that phase of her life. And I've had a guy do the same to me too. And I'm also thinking that maybe, and he's never had kids, and he's never had a permanent relationship or a lasting relationship. And I think, this isn't just a female issue. This tocophobia piece is so
Yeah.
much bigger than it's because, and this is why I think coming down, when you understand that the root trauma behind this is more often than not the root is your own birth, and we have all been born, then it's no surprise that it affects men as well, except they don't have that crunch time, that like, okay, we're going to have kids. And, the woman's got to really go through the eye of the needle there in a way that a guy
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
And so they
Exactly.
can kind of keep going and never really confront it because they're not really forced to.
Mm.
But there are other ways that they have to confront it. And they have to confront it with friends that have kids that, as the dad, they now got to go into the birth room and be there to catch the baby. And he's like, "Ooh, not be doing that. We will be hiring a doula for that. I'll be outside. Call me when it's ready." You know,
Yeah.
those are the
Removing
guys
the
that have got
guards. Yeah.
tocophobia. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And so it's friendships. It's all
Mm.
relation. And then what about family? I've again, when you think there's the mother-in-law or the mother, like saying, "We've got married now. Are you going to have
Oh yeah.
kids?" And then
Yeah.
not really understanding why the daughter might be resistant, why
Yeah.
she's struggling. I've had lots of mothers message me going, "I really would like you to work with my daughter. She's pregnant, she's terrified, she's in a right old mess, but I
Mm.
can't get her to, she won't, she's denying she's got a problem, even though she can't handle, she's not really taking the fact that she's pregnant seriously. She doesn't realize what's ahead of her.
Mm.
And but I say I will not work with anyone unless they've chosen to work with me. They
Mm.
have to choose to do this work. You can't send somebody else along to
No.
do this kind of work. You
Exactly.
have to come to it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so she, I've had these mums like, "I'm really sorry, but I can't," she won't even confront this. I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, I'd love to help her, but she has to come and ask for the help herself." And what does that do to the mother-daughter relationship when the mother can kind of see a trajectory and she really wants to help, but
Mm.
also doesn't really understand.
Yeah. I mean, it's very difficult for people who have not had this to understand it. It really is, especially women. Um, I I didn't really have that kind of relationship with my own mother, but she I mean, I think within my family it was never quite understood why I never had children. Both my sisters had children, and I don't think it was really understood why I would go. Well, for most people, you see, you're consciously choosing not to have children. It's not a conscious choice often.
Mm,
It's a
yeah,
subconscious movement within you that steers you away from
yeah,
that thing. Um, so that's what people, I think, don't understand. So, I mean, for instance, I said to somebody the other week there about how, I don't have a partner, I don't have children. And she said, "Oh, well, that must be how you like it." I'm going, no, no, I'm at peace with where I am, but it's not entirely how I like it. It's just where I am. And I've made peace with not having children. I had to come to terms with that at a certain point. That was never going to happen. never thought it was going to happen anyway. But there were moments when I was going through menopause where I thought, oh, now I actually can't, even if I wanted to. So, there are still those hurdles or passages in life where you kind of you're confronted by it and you think, oh, hang on a second now. Now, I always thought that I wasn't going to have, but now I'm not going to be able to have because I'm going through this now. Oh, that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, looking on from the outside in, it's very difficult for many, many people to understand that this is not a conscious choice.
Yeah.
Your conscious mind hasn't come into it anywhere.
No, no. And in fact, the conscious mind is going, yeah, kids. And then the subconscious is going, no, 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 no. And then one minute.
And drowning out that conscious mind in a
Yeah,
big
yeah, but
way.
it's like an argument in your head because I've got like, and I call it like the flip-flopping where like, there's a part of you that desperately wants kids and wants to be a mother. And there's another part of you that is absolutely terrified and doesn't want to go down that route. And so this is this tearing that's like one minute you go like, so this is those women that are kind of looking at all the birth videos on Instagram and they're like, go all that. And they're like, oh, no, then they go around the other direction. Oh my God, I can't do it, can't do it, can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of flip-flopping that's going on because there is a part of you that wants it, but there's another part of you that doesn't want it. And they're just tearing you up inside that is pulling you in these directions that just, and that's the feeling of being stuck, of feeling torn. When you think about those words, they speak to this idea that there's a part of you being pulled over here and a part of you being pulled over there, or you can't move in either direction because again, there's a tug of war going on. That when we're using these words to describe how we're feeling, that they really are bang on in terms of what is going on. And so, yeah, there isn't this conscious decision to not have kids.
Yeah.
You've just managed to do a really good job of avoiding it.
Yes, exactly.
And now it's like, oh, now it's crunch time or not. And
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also like those that need to know that instead of the fear making the decision, because you can feel like the fear is the one making the call here. We've talked about the conscious or the unconscious, but actually it's the fear, the phobia is making the decision here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the person that goes, but I want to know if I'm making this decision or if it's my fear making the decision. Right?
Yeah.
Who or what is shaping this decision here? And I need to know before it's too late, because if it is fear, well, then I know I've got to deal with that. If it's not fear and I actually don't want it, I can just chill out and just like live my life, and know for sure. And so it's that discernment between the fear speaking or your heart, the you inside, what's going to make you happy. And that there's inner work required to unravel that one and healing that can help you to get to that place, And when we talk about all this, it does sound like a very dark picture, but it isn't, because the whole reason we're doing this podcast is so that people can become better informed about it, because there is a solution. This is what I specialize in doing. I heal women from this all the time, and we can heal in a very short amount of time. So if you are someone that's struggling with this, just know that you can heal from this. And I'm training practitioners all around the world to be able to do this kind of work and to help raise awareness among the people that are likely to be those that you go to for the help, the support, the doctors, the therapists, whoever. So this isn't a hopeless story, even though it might sound and it might feel hopeless where you're at the moment. There is help. You can get out of this situation and heal from it,
Absolutely. And, it doesn't mean to say that everybody suffering from tocophobia has a really awful life. That's not it either. Yes, I've been through my own life has been peppered with periods of drama and losing friends, but I've had a reasonable life. I've had a good, I've enjoyed myself. I enjoy myself now. I have a lovely time. But it's not it's not the family life that many others enjoy. And you do come to terms with it. Unless you can get the healing, which we now know is available, I now know is available. Unless you get that, and you get that early on, then you just have to come to terms with the fact that that looking back, I got stuck on so many levels, talking about the word stuck.
Yeah.
But my life isn't over. And it doesn't matter how old you are when you deal with this, it's really worthwhile getting shot of that fear that is really so, so deep within you that you might not even know you've got it. But
Yeah.
you'll know what the outward representation of that fear looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I wish that I knew what it was when I was in my 20s.
Oh
Like,
God, yeah.
my God, if I could have done this then,
Yeah.
how that would have like, and the other part of this, which is why I wish for that, is because I was in such a mess. Like, I was an anxious mess, and I was, like in my 20s, I was just a disaster zone, and I was, so like low self-worth. I'm just an absolute mess, and I always put that down to being a kid of divorced parents,
Mm,
and I don't know, really, was it all that? Was
yeah.
there some of this showing up there already? And now I work with this all the time, and I've worked with women around this for so like over 10 years. The self-worth issues come up time and time again.
Yeah.
Like if
Yep.
me healing my own tocophobia was the best gift I've given myself. And if only I had done that sooner. Like I did that in my mid to late 30s. I wish I'd done that in my 20s. What my life could have looked like. When I look back, I think, bloody hell, like, just and so if one thing, like for us coming together to do this podcast is like, come on, if you're in your 20s, please don't do what we did.
No, exactly. Do not do what we.
Do
Well,
not
nobody.
follow. Like,
Well, when I was in my 20s, nobody had a clue, right? Nobody had a
yeah,
clue about
yeah, yeah,
any of
yeah,
this
yeah,
when I
yeah.
was in my 20s. So I wouldn't have had anywhere to go to for this. So I was just born at the wrong time, obviously. But but now, if you're in your 20s, definitely get this sorted
I
out.
know, I know. And so if you know anyone, if you're listening to this and you've got a daughter that age, or you've got what niece
Yeah.
or whatever, I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
just like send her to the show because the sooner she can find out that she has or hasn't got it, the better. Because if she has got it, just give her the chance to sort it out
Yeah.
and in her choice, like I just, if I'd known, and I know that sometimes you can be super stubborn in your young years, and like other people are trying to tell you stuff like, oh, I know better, blah blah blah. That's
Yeah.
totally me.
I'm all
Like
right.
that's
I'm okay.
absolutely me. So I'm
Mhm.
not saying that that's definitely going to be the silver bullet, but goodness, you can absolutely try and nudge them along, and a podcast I think is a great way to do that because they
It
can
is.
take their own time over it. So yeah, so is there anything else you want to say about relationships, JJ, before we wrap up for today? Have we missed anything?
Um, I don't think we have. We'll probably touch on relationships again in other episodes, but no, I think we've pretty much covered it for now. I
Yeah.
think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us on the Tik-Tokophobia podcast, and we will be back next time. Bye for now.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.